What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Lincoln of the Almighty Creeping Death. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here, bud. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always great to be able to talk with you guys. You guys have been killing it ever since, and I remember interviewing you guys at the Vitus show back. Who was that with even? I can't even remember, but the St. Vitus show from 2019, and you guys have been on a killing spree ever since. So it's great to be able to chat with you guys again.
I think that was with the Inner Arma in like
Yes.
early 2019. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. That was it.
That
Good
was that
time.
was the first time we ever played Vitus. That was cool.
Yeah, yeah, that was a fantastic show. And then I saw you guys later with High on Fire and Power Trip and Devil Master, and a lot has changed since then. I think it's fair to say.
Oh yeah, a whole lot's changed since then.
Yeah, definitely. But it's so awesome to have you here. We got Boundless Domain coming out very soon. I had the privilege of hearing this album, and it is absolutely killer, an absolute just riff beast and everything you could possibly want. But for people who haven't heard the whole album yet, do you feel like the first single that you released, Intestinal Rap, featuring a corpse grinder, is maybe a good representation of what this whole record will sound like, or is that just scratching the death metal surface?
I would say it's a pretty good representation of the whole thing. This record, we've been writing it for. We kind of started writing it during COVID, and like a lot of the songs we did on the previous EP, "The Edge of Existence," were in the same writing sessions. So some of the songs are a little different, but it's all it's written by the same people. It's the same goal with everything. It's just the death metal we want, kind of, I guess.
Yeah. Um,
But
no.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna. Is this sort of continuing in a similar vein to what we heard on Wretched Illusions, or was the EP that you released, The Edge of Existence, meant to kind of serve as the sort of bookmark, almost kind of like the turning point between those two full lengths?
Literally, that was the exact thing I wanted to do, was Edge kind of be a turning point, because a lot kind of changed from Wretched Illusions to now Boundless Domain. There's been a little bit of a lineup shift and all this other stuff, and it kind of was just to show that we are kind of progressing and getting tighter as a group in general as well. I didn't want to just go full length to full length, because I feel like they are a little different, but I feel like the EP that we did served a really good bridge and middle ground between the two, to show that it's the same but it's different.
Yeah, I remember interviewing Trey for to promote that EP, and I was sort of curious because I thought that The Edge of Existence still continued the brutality. I almost feel like it serves as both the perfect outro to Wretched Illusions and the perfect intro for Boundless Domain.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it, honestly. I couldn't have said it better, if I'm being honest.
Thank you. What with the making of Boundless Domain, was there any sort of preconceived vision in a way, or being that there was lineup changes as well as world changes to say the least? Do you feel like this is was this a very experimental and sort of improvisational aspect?
Not necessarily. I feel like, in a way, the process of everything for Creeping Death has always been the same, or we all kind of just get in a room together and we all kind of figure it out together, and it's not just one person writing everything on a computer and we're let's try to experiment with all this and do this. We just kind of flesh it out, see what works naturally with all of us, and see how we do things. And if it works, then we try things, and if it doesn't work, we don't do it. If it works, we do it.
Well,
Pretty much
one
it.
thing that I've noticed that has changed a lot, between the Wretched Illusions is now, especially with you, is that you've been kind of. I think it's fair to say you've been fairly busy lately. I know that you released the Maniac EP with Fugitive,
Yeah.
and you've been playing live with Fuming Mouth, and so has maybe stepping into other projects or maybe stepping into other uncharted territory, if you will, maybe helped you bring some new things to Creeping Death and maybe approach it from a clean slate.
I would definitely say yes. I think it's been for the better. Honestly, it's helped me kind of hone in on, just me personally speaking for myself. I've honed in on my style a little more, and I feel like doing other things that I wouldn't Okay, Fuming Mouth and Fugitive, fairly different from Creeping Death, and I would say that doing other things other than that has helped me see this other thing could work in Creeping Death as well, and it could make it different and a little more fresh. And I feel mostly with Fugitive as well, it's helped me kind of tone it down a little bit and not go as crazy as I normally would go, and try to give the song what it needs and make it more solid, as opposed to just, I want to do this crazy fill at this part and do all this stuff. It's it doesn't need it. I can chill out a little bit,
Yeah.
if that
Well,
makes sense.
Well, one thing that I've noticed that there's like a similarity between Creeping Death and Fuming Mouth, for example, is like even though like Creeping Death is without a doubt a death metal band, I almost say that in terms of the vibe and the experience, you guys are also just as much of a hardcore band as you are a death metal band with this sort of like raw energy and raw power. The intimacy behind it. There's the same amount of, and I mean it in a good way, the same like sort of violent intent that both Fuming Mouth and Creeping Death sort of has. So is it fair to say that you can almost make like a Venn diagram, right? There are similarities and there are differences.
Oh, 100%. Both, and I'm going to speak on behalf of Human Mouth in this one too. Both Creeping Death and Human Mouth started out playing shows in like the local hardcore scene. Like, not really in the metal scene. Like, it took a while to kind of branch into the metal scene for all of us because we all started out in hardcore as a community more than like I would say the music. But it definitely has that outlook. It started out that way, and it's definitely carried into that now, especially with getting more into the metal world. Like, we still all have like the more hardcore mindset as opposed to having like a more, I don't even want to say metal mindset, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've always said that hardcore is just as much of an adjective as it is a noun in a way. So like
Yeah,
even if you guys had the same stage presence but you were playing R&B, I would still consider you guys a hardcore band.
that's fair. That's a big part of it.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about your approach to drumming too. First and foremost, do you prefer to have music present went before you start laying down any of your drum patterns or any of your parts, or have you ever had a whole drum pattern written and maybe the band can write over that and according to that?
No, usually it starts off honestly with guitar. I would say most of the time with Creeping Death, it starts off with like one riff, and we kind of just see what works from there, and then we just kind of build off of it continuously. I've never like written like a drum pattern and been like, let's do something over this and try that. It's usually just starts with a guitar, and I'm like, let's try this over that and see how that works. And we'll try different things all the time and see what we like the best, usually.
Well, I'm not to talk shit by any means, but I mentioned this to Dirk from Megadeth and formerly of Soilwork when I brought this up to him. But if somebody presents to you the song without any drums on it, be honest, how off time is it? Is it sometimes?
Uh, Usually, surprisingly, not.
Oh,
You would think so. I mean, I feel like with Creeping Death, like we normally just write in like 4/4 or 6/8, and it also helps because Trey, the guitar player, also plays drums.
yeah.
He has a really good sense of rhythm too. So like I've been very lucky in having it just both of us are like locked in that sense, and it just always like kind of makes sense, and it's very easy to work off of each other with that as well.
Yeah, a lot of people like assume that because drums aren't very melodic driven, that there's not too much emotion behind it. And I spoke with Justin Foley about this, but like I kind of disagree. Like I'd imagine there's a lot of emotion and energy that you're channeling into your parts as well, right? There has to be sort of like it has to resonate with your heart just as much as you have to execute it in your hands.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. You can tell the difference between a human playing it and a computer playing it, and there is like emotion and actual like what's the word I'm looking for? You can tell the difference. Sorry.
Yeah, no, no.
I'm a little sleepy.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But like, it does each type of because there's so many different techniques that you're incorporating into it. Does it almost feel like depending on the technique, it almost is reflective of a different emotion altogether? If you're more ride driven versus like more blast beat driven or something like that.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. Yeah, definitely there is.
Um, if you don't mind me asking, I know it's like very cliche to ask like what are your inspirations in a way, but like because I see, obviously when I watch you guys play, I see incredible techniques regardless whether it will be I see Tim Young in you, I see Paul from Cannibal Corpse in you, I see so many great death metal drumming influences, but is there also other drummers maybe outside of the realm of death metal that inspire you?
100%. One of my favorite bands of all time would be Smashing Pumpkins, and I love Jimmy Chamberlain, and he's an incredible drummer. I can't play drums like that guy though. But I definitely like. I don't jock his style by any means, but listening to that so much, like in my head, like those types of things are the first things I'll go to when I'm writing stuff. Other favorite drummers of mine, probably top two would be Dave Lombardo and Dave Grohl, and I feel like Dave Grohl is just one of the hardest hitting, solid rock drummers, and then Dave Lombardo is just like the most solid, probably faster drummer there is, in my opinion. And like I can't play drums like either of those guys, but I try my best to just incorporate what I like from both of them and do it in my own way, if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely does. And it's interesting to say though because like And I'm not a drummer, so maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm asking this correctly, but like I feel like death metal or just any form of metal in general, with the intensity and the speed behind it, that I always thought that if you could play like death metal, like if you could play like Straight from Dying Fetus or something like that, that you could almost play anything. How different? Like because I figure with Smashing Pumpkins, for example, like not to
Yeah.
discredit what Jimmy Chamberlain can do, but like you play a song like Mayonnaise or Tonight Tonight, that's a
Yeah.
little less intense than what we would hear off of Creeping Death. So how could you not like play one or the other? I feel like if you could play death metal, you could almost play anything, right?
In my opinion, just coming from a drum perspective, if you've been doing the same thing longer, it's a lot easier to do that. So I've been playing faster for longer. It's very easy to play things very fast. Playing something a lot slower like that is actually a lot harder than you would think. And like trying to stay on the beat into a click, like I consistently want to rush it if I'm playing something slower. So like it actually in a way can be a lot harder to do something that slow and give it the same feel that like they would have as well. Um, yeah, a lot of like death metal stuff and like jazz stuff is really hard. I've always thought that if you could play jazz drums, you could play anything because that's actually like really difficult and you have to like split your entire body into four and kind of like be able to do a different thing on each foot and each hand, whereas you don't really have to do that in any other genre of music.
and
But
and and I think with jazz, like there, you have to switch up the sticks more often. I know that some jazz
yeah,
drummers they have to go from wood tips to nylon tips. They have to bring out the
yeah,
brushes here and there. So I feel like
exactly.
there's a lot more to do. But talking about playing fast versus playing slow, so I'm guessing we're not going to get any gentle ballads from Creeping Death anytime soon.
No, probably not.
Never say never.
Never say never. That's true.
Yeah,
Could
but
happen.
But I had that discussion with a Buck Cherry before too, where they say like if you're playing like a slow song, you're like more exposed in a way. Like whereas if you're playing
Mm,
fast, worst case scenario, you might stumble a little bit, but you just have to keep up.
exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Actually, yeah.
Now, when it comes to the writing process behind Creeping Death, when a lot of people tell me, like when I ask how the making of an album was, and they say, "Oh, we all mutually came together, or it was all, it was all in agreement." I really don't believe it when they tell me that because if you're in a band with five guys and you're writing a dozen or so songs, there's gonna be some room for disagreement or different opinions. But do you think that can maybe
Yeah.
help with the Creeping Death sound in a way and help with the songwriting as opposed to everybody just agreeing on everything?
Yeah. I would say like anytime we tend to write something, it would be like I suppose majority rule, but honestly, like there's not like a ton of disagreements whenever we write stuff. Sometimes it'll be like, I'm not really a fan of that. Let's change it and try this instead. The good thing about like writing with everybody in a room is we can literally just if we don't like something, we can try something else and see what we like more. And eventually, honestly, like if you keep doing it, eventually you're like, actually, I do really like that part. It might just be like a slow burn or something. But um, I lost my train of thought for a second. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Um, but I would definitely say like for us at least, there really was not like a ton of disagreements when it came to writing. And when there was, it was very like easy to change it and figure out what we actually wanted to do in comparison. So it's like if there was like a slight disagreement, it's like no one was like bent out of shape over anything really.
Well, when you joined up with Creeping Death, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, but you came into Creeping Death in 2018. So, like, when you joined up with Creeping Death, were you kind of like looking at the Sacrament of Death EP, or maybe even like the Meant to Bleed demo era, and being like, okay, this is how I have to play, or were you kind of given full range to bring a little bit of your own mix into Creeping Death, being that were in a bunch of other bands before?
I was pretty much just given free reign just to do whatever I wanted. I did try to kind of go off of that. Um, Obviously, like I joined the band, I knew everybody beforehand, and I was a fan of the band, so I knew what they were kind of going for. Because one of the only Creeping Death shows I didn't go to before I was in the band was the very first show, and I was just out of town, and that's why I didn't go. But like I said, like I joined, I knew what the not to say end goal, but like I know what they were going for when it came to stuff like that. So it was a pretty natural like transition. I feel like when it came to just me joining and trying to write stuff.
Um, when it comes to the writing too, because isolation is always, I've said, one of the greatest sources of creativity. But I feel like Creeping Death does also rely on camaraderie a lot. So do you prefer to think of ideas when you're more alone in your own element and there's nothing really between you and your instrument, or do you prefer, or is it easier to come up with ideas when you're more in the company of your bandmates?
Definitely easier with everybody around. I feel like it's I feel like we just bounce off of each other a lot, and it tends to just it's faster and it's a lot more natural, and I feel like more ideas come to play and we can try more things, and it just I also like the fact that everyone had a hand in everything when it comes to it too. I don't want it to just be like one person writing all the music for us.
Of course, that's a rare answer that I get because some people are saying like even though they all write the stuff together, when it comes to thinking on how they're executing the parts and everything like that, that they prefer to be alone because sometimes your own band could even be a distraction sometimes.
Yeah, I tend to second guess myself a lot when it comes to writing parts. So having somebody say, "No, I like that," "No, I don't like that," really helps me a lot too.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
One of the most common questions I ask in every interview is how different is it playing live versus songwriting? Because, but like for like a singer or a guitarist, when there's like a lot of crowd interaction involved, and you're like have to stare at the crowd, and there's like a lot of movement and stage presence. Does for you, being that you are behind the kit the whole time, you're looking at the same toms, the same cymbals. It's sort of like a similar view in a way. Is there still a completely different energy in the live setting as opposed to uh, a different energy in the live setting as opposed to when you're songwriting, or is it fairly similar in your situation?
Oh, it's completely different every time. I get a lot more like just on stage at least when there's like a lot of people like watching. I feel like a lot of people would agree with this too. I just tend to get a lot of adrenaline, and you can see it when we play because I don't play to a metronome. I tend to play stuff a lot faster because of that. But when I'm just in a room by myself, like I just kind of try my best to just play it as solid as I can and stick to the beat. And when we're on stage, I definitely have a lot more energy, and I don't want to say I'm like go 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 as fast as I can, but I'm definitely like there's energy involved in it. Just helps me get through it a lot faster and like more. I don't want to say solid because sometimes it's not as solid, but it's definitely completely different in the two. I have a lot more energy on stage than I do just in a practice room.
Well, is like the live setting almost something you could like mentally prepare yourself for, or does that just have to come naturally as you play over time more and more?
You kind of cut out for a
Oh,
second. Sorry, can you
no,
repeat that last bit?
no, you're good. Does is that almost something you could prepare for the live setting in a way, or is that something that you just have to that comes naturally more and more with experience?
Honestly, kind of both. I feel like when you are home for a little while and like you have the first couple shows on tour, you kind of like have to prepare yourself and just be like, okay, like you got to get back into the swing of things. Because like for me at least, like especially doing like double duty on tours, so many like not years. I did it for about a year, but like having like to go through waves of having adrenaline
Oh,
and not like in between sets and stuff. Like I kind of have to prepare myself, and I just warm up and just kind of like when I do like jumping jacks for a little bit or something. But like, just preparing yourself to like tell yourself like you're about to have this rush of adrenaline, like just cool. It's gonna be cool. And then like once you start getting into tour, it's just like a no brainer. Like you just get right into it. And sometimes like I don't even really think about it. Like maybe 2 or 3 shows into tour, I'm like locked in, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, just playing another show, no big deal.
yeah. Eventually, it
Um,
becomes a second nature.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep. But one thing I also wanted to ask is, I've seen you play at a variety of different venues as well. Like tonight, I know you're going to be playing at Irving Plaza. That's an 1,100 cap venue. There's a barricade. It's, a Live Nation venue. It has the Live Nation charm, as I call it. But, I've also seen you play at a place like Elsewhere, which is sort of like a bridge between like a place like Irving Plaza and Vitus. So it's a bigger venue, more atmospheric, but there's no barricade. But then I've also
Mhm.
seen you play at St. Vitus in more intimate venues. So does the Creeping Death experience also change depending on the venue that you're playing in, whether it will be the size or even the tour package that you're on?
100%. Yeah, I would say I definitely prefer the more intimate setting, like at Vitus, for example, where it's just short stage and no barricade, and people can kind of do whatever they want if they want to get on stage and they don't have to. Having a barricade took a little bit to get used to because I'd never played venues with a barricade before. So it was like kind of weird. And also, like in some instances, like for me, the way like lights are pointed at me, like I can't really see very far in front of the stage, so I don't really know what people are doing. But when it's at somewhere like Vitus and there is no barricade and everybody's like right there in front of you, like I can see exactly what's going on, and it's I just prefer that honestly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I've always wondered because I'm bringing this up because I saw you guys play together. But Devil Master, I've always seen them play at like the smaller type of venues like Elsewhere. And then
Yeah,
but then them playing with My Chemical Romance at the fucking stadiums. Like,
yeah,
I was wondering how they're gonna pull that off, and they did it. They shrunk those stadiums into little
Oh yeah,
hole in the wall places. So
it was pretty incredible. I actually, they played two Texas shows, and we took the Creeping Death van, and I like drove them to both shows, and so I was at the two of the three My Chemical Romance shows they did, and that's a very accurate way to put it. Like they definitely made it like there was 20,000 people in there, but they made it seem like very small and intimate, and we were all like right there. It was really cool, honestly.
that had to have
It
been.
was kind of a crazy thing to see Devil Master play a 20,000 cap arena.
Yeah, no, like especially because I was wondering too if they were gonna have like the same visual aesthetic that they had when you were playing it elsewhere. If they were gonna have the spider webs, like part of me wondered, are they gonna get that much spider web to cover the whole stage? But
I wasn't at the Philadelphia show, but I know they had some sort of like stage setup. They didn't have any spider webs or anything, but they had like a lot of stuff going on, and they couldn't really bring anything to Texas, so they just literally like it was the first time I ever seen Devil Master with no like spider webs or stage setup or anything like that. It was just instruments and them pretty much, and that also was kind of cool to see that. And it's odd to not see something like that in an intimate setting too, but it was neat. It was pretty cool.
yeah, I saw them not long after that in Queens, and I mean that was just mesmerizing to see. Like that was
Yeah.
just I like what Metal Injection has been referring to them as sleaze thrash. I don't know what that necessarily means,
Ooh,
but that's quite an
that's a good
interesting
one.
that's an interesting
Yeah.
subgenre to say.
That's a pretty accurate description of them, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and the final question I wanted to ask you is because before you know it, I'm asking about this way too far in advance, but kind of wanted just a little extra time here. The 10-year anniversary of Creeping Death is going to come sooner than you think. I think the last thing we learned, one of the most recent things we learned in the last couple of years, is really just how fast time moves along. I remember, like it was yesterday,
Yeah.
first seeing you guys at the Inner Arma gig, and so before you know it, Creeping Death is going to be approaching a decade-long anniversary. So you'll probably be well into the record cycle for Boundless Domain. But could we see like more celebrations? What basically it's a fancy way of asking what could we be expecting from Creeping Death in the near future? Because I only see it getting bigger and bigger from this point.
Yeah, yeah. I actually definitely brought this up the other day because I was talking about it, and I was like, in 2 years, it'll be like 10 years since Creeping Death started. Like, we should try to kind of figure out what we're doing. There will definitely be some sort of celebration. I have no idea what yet. We're still talking about it, but I want to try to get something figured out kind of soon to do. Um, when Power Trip, did the 10-year thing, that was the first year they did their Evil Beat Fest or whatever, and one of my old bands opened it, and I remember just thinking like how big of a deal that was for 10 years, and that does not seem like long ago at all. And the fact that this 10 years is about to come up to kind of like really put into perspective, like you said, like how fast time goes by and all that, like it's really pretty mind-blowing, honestly. It's crazy to think about, and I'm very excited to actually see that through and have some sort of 10-year celebration for Creeping Death.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is and your fellow death metal peers from Texas are coming here this Sunday. Frozen Soul. Like, I think if you got like a tour with Frozen Soul and I Am, and like every sort of the most aggressive sides of Texas on one bill, I think would be amazing. Because every time I've interviewed, I interviewed Riley, God rest his soul, and I've had the privilege of interviewing you guys multiple times as well as Frozen Soul, I Am, and like I all those bands I mentioned always come up in discussion. Like I haven't done an I Am interview without referencing Creeping Death or a Frozen
Yeah.
Soul interview without referencing, etc. So it almost seems like there's got to be like a "Don't mess with Texas" sort of bill.
That would be great. We've been talking about doing Fourth Frozen Soul for forever. One day it's gonna happen. We both just have crazy schedules right now. One day we're gonna make time for it.
Yeah, I think it's such a
Same with I am too. Yeah.
it's such a tease that they're playing the same venue right after you guys, literally in 4 days. So
Yeah. Yeah, that
so
tour they're doing is gonna crush. It's so sick.
yeah, absolutely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time, and thank you to Creeping Death always for coming onto the show and supporting the show. Just with the release of Boundless Domain, what else could we be expecting from Creeping Death in the near future?
Um,
If you're allowed to say, of course, at this time.
Without saying too much, we'll be hitting the road for a little bit, for a little while, with a lot of great bands and a lot of great tours. Can't say too much right now. You'll hear about a lot of it very soon. Don't worry.
Yeah, you'll tell me when I turn the record button off.
Yeah, I can tell you when to turn the
Yeah,
record. No, that's fine.
yeah, fair enough. But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Creeping Death. Be sure to check out Boundless Domain. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.